Welcome to the Dental Decoders podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and I'm here to help you crack the code on all things dental operations. Each week, we dive into topics to help you overcome roadblocks, streamline operations, and reduce team burnout. Whether you're an owner, a practice manager, or a team member, this podcast is for you. Join us for insightful discussions, engaging interviews, and practical tips. So sit back and relax as we crack the code on all things dental operations together. I am so excited to have you joining us for another week of the Dental Decoders podcast. For this week's conversation, I am joined by Christopher Lewis, and I am so excited to share this interview with you because many people in the dental industry happen to work with their spouses, whether they're both dentists and they've opened a practice together, or whether you have a doctor in an office manager situation, or even doctor hygienist, doctor assistant, whatever the case may be. It's very popular to work with your significant other in the dental industry. And some things that I've heard working with doctors is after you graduate, it can be difficult to form relationships while you're building a new business. So I wanted to bring on a relationship expert who can talk to us about some tips that come with working with your spouse. So I brought on Chris. Chris is a Los Angeles-based dating advisor, coaching individuals in the art of navigating their way to successful relationships. He's helped thousands of people through his talks, interviews, his highly acclaimed relationship podcast, and blog, Dating Intelligence. Chris has the ability to think outside the box in service of reaching your highest potential. He gets to the core of what's holding you back from successful relationships and helps you find your true self. No more fine print. Chris helps you decipher and read between the lines so you no longer have to overthink how to handle thorny relationship problems. His style is perfect for the Talkify brand, and he's looking forward to helping you find your lane. You'll realize how excited and motivated you'll feel from his unique blend of passion and intuition. Chris will help you continue to dive deep into becoming your best possible self. Someone out there will definitely take notice of. I'm super excited for you to check out this episode and get to learn more about Chris. Welcome to this week's episode of Dental Decoders. Chris, I am so excited to have you here. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I think you're going to be a huge asset to our listeners. So thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Oh, you're welcome, Brittany. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah. So we were connected by a mutual friend. And one of the things that I was really looking for this podcast is to bring people in from outside the traditional dental realm to help enhance the lives of people who are in the dental space. Couple things that we're finding in dentistry and a couple reasons why I had listeners reach out to request someone who is in your realm or in your space is because one, a lot of dentists are working with their spouses and they find that can be really stressful on their relationship. And two is a lot of dentists who are going out there starting their own practice. They just got out of dental schools. They just went through years of schooling and now they're starting their own business. They're becoming entrepreneurs. They're having a really hard time prioritizing meeting the right person. And with your background in the relationship space, I think I could not have handpicked a better person to cover these topics than you. So I'm so excited. I'll stop rambling. I'd love to hear more about what you do and how you do it and any practical tips that you think that our listeners could take away as well.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And congratulations to all those new dentists starting the new practices. And wow, that's great that you say that. I'm hearing a lot of people work with their spouses as well, which is obviously it's a point of contention, I'm sure, in some relationships as well, because you have to really learn how to, separate work and home life, I guess, in that space, because, when you're together all the time, you have to have a sense of independency, self-time, quality time with your partner in a different manner outside of work as well. And not, obviously, as you know, Brittany, not bringing your work home with you. So me, for myself, I have a podcast called Dating Intelligence. It's a relationship podcast where I just talk about all things relationships, and I want everyone to learn how to be the best version of themselves, not only loving yourself first, but also learning how to navigate that journey with a partner partner in a relationship, whether it be single, married, divorced, whatever it may be. So the tips that I can always say to everyone out there is, first and foremost, just to make sure, once again, to make sure that you're handling your side of the street, and make sure that you are, loving yourself first, giving yourself self-care, giving yourself that time to grow, to be more confident, to be a little bit more self-aware of what your needs are before you put your needs out to anyone else. And so it's one of those things where I work on that as much as possible, and like anything else, we kind of get a tendency to get complacent. We have a tendency to obviously just kind of just get in that space of like, oh yeah, I'm feeling, a little laid back, where we should always be working on ourselves and working on our relationships. So the biggest tip that I can give you guys is to make sure that you're always checking with your partner, and always make sure that you communicate. Communication is key to everything. And especially in these situations where dentists are working with their spouses in the space as well, you have to really be able to communicate what your needs and wants are every single day.
Ooh, I really love that. I don't work with my spouse, but we're both entrepreneurs. We work out of the same house. So it's almost like we work together.
Yeah.
And I find it very difficult personally to switch gears from like boss, worker, employee, entrepreneur to that softer space, that like wife, caregiver space. So I can relate to everything that you just shared there, because I personally have those struggles as well. So
Right. And especially in your case too, like you coming in from with two entrepreneurs, two individuals who are really good at what they do. And, like I said, it's like you come home, you do have to change up the hat. Like for me,
yeah.
it's like obviously I'm self-employed. I do dating coaching and things like that, but I'm also a tennis pro as well. So, and I'm also at a lot of events and red carpet events and running off doing my podcasts. And so, and my girlfriend of 7 years, she's a doctor, she's on a liver transplant team, kidney transplant team, so she's
Wow.
obviously busy, constantly busy. So we have to learn how to check in with each other. We have to learn how to schedule a lot of times as well. And quite frankly, once again, it goes back to communication, because, if she's busy, I need her to communicate to me when and where she's doing. And that way I don't have to feel like I'm just hanging around or vice versa, or waiting on her, and letting her also know that my schedule, if I have something going on, when can we have that time together? So I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, I want to stay in that lane of the couples that typically work together, or who are in some similar situations to you and I, where we both come to the table with busy schedules, even if we don't work together. So if I need to make sure that I'm prioritizing my partner and I'm able to step out of that space, that like more dominant, that work Brittany space, and I need to step into this space where I am available to be the wife Brittany, and be able to provide that attention to my husband in the way that he deserves, and also the way that I want him to provide that attention to me. What is a step that I can take to make sure that I'm prioritizing that? Or what is something that I can do to make that switch a little bit more seamless?
Right. So, well, that's a really good question. And, the first thing that comes to mind in that space is that, we call it in this space the fixed flow energy, that masculine versus feminine energy. And so, and it sounds like, you have a pretty good handle on that, where you can go worrying from that, the leader position at your job, the boss, in other words, and then coming home and having to being able to, like you said, being a little bit softer for your husband, allowing that banter, allowing that connection to happen without feeling like you're always going to be in that boss type role, and just allowing yourself, which I appreciate you hearing, allowing yourself to go more into your feminine, which is great. So the only thing that you can do is just, like I said, first and foremost, is just make sure that you are taking care of, once again, how you're coming home. First of all, are you bringing your stress home with you? Or are you bringing your work home with you? Yes, we all do that, right? But it's allowing yourself also to say, hey, I need to take a break for me first, before anything else. Because if you just jump right back home, and then all of a sudden now you're putting yourself into wife/mother mode, that's still another full-time job, as we know, right? So you don't want to just switch one hat for the other, because without actually having that pause for yourself. So the best way I can say it is, before anyone ever walks into the door, just make sure that you check all that stuff at the door, because once again, if you can sit in your car for a few minutes, or that ride home, decompress, whether you listen to your favorite podcast, whether you listen to classical, or whether you listen to rock and roll, I don't care. Just take those moments for yourself, guys, to really allow yourself to kind of step away from work and just to now be into who Brittany is. Why did your husband fall in love with you in the first place, right? That's the girl he wants to see when you walk in the door. And so all of us have to do it. That's the man you want to walk in the door as well, right?
Mhm.
So for me, coming home from a long day, or my girlfriend coming from a long day, we take those decompression moments. And one of the best things I love is when they walk in the door. We want to give you your space, but I also want to acknowledge that, hey, I missed you. I love you. Like, give her a big hug, you bring her favorite thing, whatever it may be, just that to know that you're home now. Take a breath, relax. I'm here for whatever you need, just as much as you are there for what they need.
That is super, super smart. I love I like that you framed it as be that person that they fell in love with when you walk through the door, because I work from home. I work in our basement, but I still have to like
Okay.
check that before I head
So you only have
upstairs.
a couple of feet to walk into. So in your
Exactly.
case, just stay in that office a little bit longer, Brittany, or just maybe take a
Hmm.
round. Well, I don't know, walk around the block, something to mix it up for you, to take you
Yeah.
out of that headspace.
That's such a unique perspective that hit really home for me, to be that person when you walk through the door. So I'm so glad that you said that. It kind of just reframed everything for me. So we can end the call now. I'm done. I'm just kidding.
I didn't know you had like
Um,
one single door blocking your whole life from point A to point B.
it's a door and a staircase, to
Right.
be
Yeah.
fair, but
Yeah.
we're
You're
not
like,
talking
that's a
about me
long
anyways.
staircase.
Yeah, it's sometimes it feels like it. No, I'm So what would you say for the entrepreneurs who maybe do have they have a commute home, they have a little bit of a longer path, but then they walk home and it's kids immediately as
Yeah.
well. So now not only are you wearing the mom hat, the wife hat, the doctor hat, but you've got the kids that you've got to take care of the second you walk through the door. Is there a magic system that we can have for when we walk through the door to make sure that we are ready for that? Or is it really all just take the time before you even get there for yourself?
Good question. And like I said, it's honestly because I've seen it all, I've heard it all, and everything that you just said, that's real stuff right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once again, just if you're walking into a house full of kids and you have to like get things done at the house and all these extra things that are going on outside of work, and yet you feel like you still have this heavy load of the workday on you, the only thing that I can say, and the best thing I could say, is just be present, because if you're not being present, you're going to come into that house and the energy that you bring with you is going to stay with you like this dark cloud that your
Mm-hmm.
kids will see, your husband can see. And what do they do in those situations? They back off. They don't really want to be around you because it's like, Brittany needs her space, or whoever it may be needs their space and time. But it's also not being fair to the people that you're walking into. Like, because, right away, what does a little kid do? They want your attention right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
So walk in present, just even if it's for 5 minutes, guys, just allow yourself, you know what? I'm going to walk in. I'm going to give my little one all that attention they need for 5 minutes. And then after that 5 minutes, just like, an animal or whatever it may be, they're good. They're good
Mm-hmm.
for me. Just say, mommy needs a little bit of time just to go upstairs to change or whatever it may be. But just make sure that you walk in and acknowledge their presence first and foremost. And the only way you can do that is just allowing yourself to be in the present moment.
That is fantastic. That's is so real for me. My kids walk through the door and immediately are in like before I've even switched gears, they're in the office and they're like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like,
Right. And it's
"Oh
stressful for
goodness."
you, I'm sure, because it's like you haven't had time to decompress, like I said, or you haven't had that
Mm-hmm.
moment to yourself. And so I understand that, we all go through it every day, especially when you're starting a new business. Like I heard you say that earlier. When most of these dentists are coming and starting their own practice, it's a lot of pressure, the pressure of, is this going to work? Or
Mm-hmm.
am I going to get enough clients? Am I going to get enough, patients, whatever it may be? Am I going to be able to get the business side down? So you're already coming in with a full load of stress, but also allow your partner to really be there for you when they're chiming in and wanting to give you that love and that hug. Be receptive to that, be able to take that and to actually to take it in, because it's like I said, that's all that you're going to get. And sometimes just a little bit, like what my girlfriend says to me when I walk in the door stressed out, she gives me a big hug and she goes, just take a deep breath. And in my brain I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, and all of a sudden I go, and I go, oh, like it's so like it's like I just calm down. I go and I look and I go, thank you for that. That's all it
Mm-hmm.
takes sometimes. She'll just give me a hug and go, take a deep breath. You're going to be fine. And that brings me back to the present moment. And I'm like, thank you so much for that. So allow your spouse to, once again, people, allow your significant other or whoever it may be, allow them to be helpful for you. Allow them to say, like when you walk in the door, Brittany, or whoever it may be, hey, you know what? When I come home, if you ever see me kind of, bogged down with a lot of stress or like this bad energy, just just, tell them what you need and to get you out of that funk. And whether it be, I just need you just to hold my hand, or I need a hug, or I need you just to like rub my head, whatever it may be that works for you to calm you down, allow them to do that for you.
I think in the dental industry, everyone's pretty much heart-centered, and the idea of having to kind of fill your own cup in that way and actually ask for what you need is going to be very far outside of their comfort
Of
zone.
course it will. Mm-hmm.
But I think most things in relationships are a give and take, and sometimes that involves getting out of that comfort zone and tell it like, I can't read your mind. We actually do have to spell it out for each other and let you know what we need in that specific moment. So I
Right.
like the reframe on that also.
Yeah, especially since, like once again, if your partner knows you well enough, they know where to leave you alone. One of the biggest things that my partner and I do, like I said, our lives are very busy, and sometimes, we forget to check in, like most of us do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when we forget to check in, now it becomes an assumption. Well, this person's busy, so therefore I'm going to be busy, or I don't want to get in their personal space, or I don't want to bother them because I can see that they have a lot on their mind, versus you just tackling the issues head on and just saying, hey, do you need anything? Can I help you with something? Do we need to take a break? Just something to keep that, that sort of relationship communication and flow going, because nothing worse than not being able to check in with each other. And next thing you know, you've drifted so far apart that it becomes an issue now.
Mm-hmm. For the practice owners or for the doctors who are working with their spouses, they go to work, they spend all day together wearing their office manager and doctor hat, or their doctor and doctor hat, or whatever the case may be. We're working alongside each other in this space. Something throws off the workday where there is a work conflict between these two people who happen to be spouses. What tip or advice would you give them for taking that hat off and then pivoting into the home life when they get there, so that doesn't fester over and kind of cross that home work line?
I hear you on that. Wow, that's a good question. Yeah, and first of all, guys, if you guys are working together, kudos to you, because it is
Mm-hmm.
not easy. But at the same time, I also appreciate the fact that you guys actually have made that decision to do that together. I mean, that to in itself, it says something about your relationship. So I appreciate and say kudos to that as well. So to answer that question, I'm going to go off of what my dad, who's also a doctor, he's retired now, just retired like last year, and his wife, who's his head nurse. So they actually been working together for over 30 years together. And it's
Wow.
just mind boggles me on how well they get along at the office, and then not being able to bring a lot of things home that are like conflictual like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they do problem solve. And so to go off of that, just take a minute, if you're going to bring work home with you, just say, hey, look, let's figure out a way to leave this right now, and let's come back and revisit it with maybe something either written out for each other, or you come up with what you think I need to do, or vice versa. Anything to keep it from overflowing to home to where it's going to create some sense of tension, because you don't want that. It's like you've
Mm-hmm.
had a long enough day at work. Why do you want to bring that home with each other? You want to be able to be, and especially when you go, geez, I thought tonight we were going to have a nice dinner or whatever it was, and now this spills over. And you can still have that nice dinner, but just put a pin in it, leave it alone. And if you say, hey, this is going to be difficult to do, then just you know, let the other one maybe try to figure out a solution in the meantime, to where it's not going to really feel like it's going to be too much of a negative energy in the house. So, but that is very hard. But the best I can say is that you're going to have to put a pin in it, and just maybe just both revisit it after you guys have had some time at house, to just kind of, get in that space of being together at home.
For sure. One thing that's worked really well for us is I am the type of problem solver who wants to attack it immediately, and I
Okay.
get anxious when we don't. My husband is the opposite. He is a give me time to process kind of guy. So one thing that has worked really well for us is we put a timeline on it. Tomorrow at 2, we're going to have this conversation.
Love
That
that.
allows me the peace to not get anxious and be like, oh my gosh, what is he thinking? Because I know
Right.
that tomorrow at 2, I'm going to have an answer. And it also gives him the space to process. So putting that actual time frame on it, so we know we're putting a pin in it, but we're actually going to talk about it at some point, has been an absolute game changer in our relationship.
I love that.
And I hope that that is something that I can bring to the audience
Look at
too.
that.
So
And you just brought that to the
yeah.
audience, Brittany. Kudos to that. See, she knows her stuff. This is why you have this podcast. But no, but that's absolutely right, though, because I feel like, once again, just like scheduling, when you don't have a lot of time together and you put something on a schedule, that day or whatever it may be that you put on the schedule, that is more locked in than just kind of free flowing. Because if you free flow, once again, your mind is always trying to assume, or there's assumptions, or, and it creates a lot of negative. It creates a lot of, just bad will energy sometimes, because you just feel like you're not getting the time in, but yet you're not putting a schedule together. So using a time frame on coming back to that conflict, it just puts everyone at ease, because at least now you know that, all right, well, there's something set. I can go in now and do this, and I forget about it now, and at least we know we can talk about it tomorrow, or whenever that time frame may be.
Absolutely. On the topic of scheduling, so we're going to schedule time for ourselves to switch hats when we get home. We're going to schedule times for us to revisit these conversations when they arrive and they cause tension. How do we also manage to schedule or prioritize date nights or types of events where we can feel close together as spouses and not as coworkers?
Right. Okay. So this is where I go back to, I'm going to use my dad and my stepmom, who, like, ever since I was a kid, I learned this a lot from him, and I utilize this a lot as a dating coach, a relationship coach. The fact is, with these two people working together in that retrospect, the one thing I love about them is that when they come home from work, like, first and foremost, they take time out for themselves. Like, my dad's a big computer gamer. He'll go upstairs, decompress, because he's had a long day, whether being in surgeries or at the office of the clients or patients and all this. And she's, running around doing all of her stuff as well. They come home, they take a time out for themselves first and foremost. But what I appreciate what they do, because their weeks are so busy and he's on call, or he's, jetting off to deliver a baby in the middle of the night, or whatever it may be, they take a lot of trips together. They spend weekend, like they'll set something as like, hey, this upcoming weekend we have this small little trip here, or 2 weeks from now we're doing this. And so that actually, he says, the good news is that when I have my time to myself, I know that we have something planned. But when we do those things together, we are like inseparable. Like, they just do it together. And that I can appreciate, because, once again, you need to take care of yourself first in order to be better for the other person. But at the same time, when they do dinners together and things like that, they catch up. But they all still know that, they still have those independent times to do what they need to do back at home, because their work days are so busy. So you guys, like, plan those date nights ahead of time, and really stick to them. And once again, obviously, when you both get home, you might be tired. One might go into bed early. The other might need to stay up a little bit longer, whatever it may be. But at least, you have that down on paper. And that is so much better than just not doing anything at all.
100%. I like that. I'm a big schedule person, so anytime we
Good.
can put things on paper, that's great for me. So
Yeah. Right. And
I
it
love
gives you a
that.
sense of relief, right? It's like, you have your time, at least, though. And I know that kids are a little bit different, because they're like more the wild card of that whole situation, because, schedule or not, when they're little, it's like, they don't know a schedule, you can tell them whatever, but it's a lot of pivoting when it comes to that, a lot of pivoting. So, it's just extra work. But at the same time, like I said, if you just allow them a little bit of time and just structure, then it works out really well.
Yeah. I want to ask you, at the beginning, I kind of word vomited on you and had all these different things that I wanted to talk about. So I want to be respectful of your time, but I also do want to pivot for just a second and ask you, in the realm of dating, if you are a busy entrepreneur, you just graduated dental school, you're opening your own practice, or you're becoming an associate, whatever the case may be, you're starting this new career, you just got done with school, you've got all these things on your plate. How do you go about meeting someone, if that's something that you want to add into your life, and coordinating that in with your already busy and changing new lifestyle that you've come into?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like, if you're doing that, and you're trying to get this business off the ground, you're either going to do one of two things. You're either going to go full force and leave that part of your life alone right now, the relationship part of your life or dating part of your life, just because you're too busy in this part of life ramping up your career. Then by all means, just go solo at this point, or if you feel like you can take that extra little bit of a load and, and go in other words, wanting a partner or looking in the dating space, you're going to have to make quality time for that person just as much as your business side of it. But you have to let that person know, hey, this is what I'm doing, but I also want to make sure that I'm also fostering this new relationship as well. And like I said, it's all about the communication, because no one wants to start something new and then you meet someone and then all of a sudden you go dark on them or ghosting them, not because you're doing it on purpose, but because you're just so busy trying to get this other thing off the ground, which means that you probably should have never have actually started this, fostering this new relationship anyway. So I would rather sacrifice the time of just getting myself in place of my new business first, And then once you feel like you're at a space or a timeline in this new business, now you can afford to go out and find love if that's what you want to do. But I would not match it together at the beginning if you feel like you can't juggle both. If you cannot juggle it, then don't do it because it's not fair to the other person.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for answering all my questions, even though they're coming at all sorts of different directions
That's
on
okay. I
that.
love them. This is great. Yeah.
So we have one signature question that we end every episode on. So as we wrap today's episode of Dental Decoders, before I get into our signature question, I would love to ask if people are listening to this episode and they want to learn more about you, Chris, they want to learn more about how they can strengthen their relationship or start a new relationship, where can they find you and how can they connect to you?
So you guys can find me on my website, www.dating-intelligence.com, dating-intelligence.com. You can also find me on Instagram under Fetch Sport, FETCH, SPORT. That's my personal. Unfortunately, my dating intelligence page got hacked about 6 months ago, and I'm still trying to get it up. Like literally today, I was on the phone with Facebook today and Instagram trying to get it back up. So I'm working on that. But, we're on all audio and video on YouTube and all audio, just like your podcast as well. So if you really want to see me doing my thing with my coach and stuff, please look at the YouTube videos. If not, just listen to all audio at Dating Intelligence. And that's it though. If you need anything, just reach out on my website and reach out to me personally. If you have any relationship questions or if you need any relationship advice or help, I'm available.
That is so generous of you, Chris. I'll make sure I link everything in the show notes so people can reach out to you. I'm sure just scratched the surface on all things dating and working with your spouse. So I'm sure our audience will want to connect with you. So our final question that we wrap every episode with is, what would you consider your decoding moment or a secret code that you've uncovered in your life that's been instrumental in your career and your relationships?
Oh, great question. Oh, I didn't know you were going to ask this, but I've always got this one on the wrap. So for me, I pride myself that what I've decoded about myself, which has made me a better human being and person all around, is the fact that I lead with my true authentic self. That's first and foremost. What you see is what you get. And people are just amazed. They're like, wow, you really are a good guy, or wow, you really are this. And I'm very, like I said, what you see is what you get, because I know myself. I've worked on myself and I know myself well enough to know, my flaws, my good points, my bad points. I take it all, right? And I'm not afraid to go deep and really explore that. Most of the time we're afraid of what's really lies within us, but allow yourself, guys, to just get to know yourself more and don't be afraid of who you are. It's like, be who you are and stand by who you are. And that's leading with your true authentic self, because no imposter syndrome here, no people pleasing here. It's just, like I said, I am just Christopher Lewis. That's just me.
Oh, I love that. Our episode before this was on imposter syndrome. So I think this is going to be such a smooth transition into this episode. I'm so glad that your decoding moment just aligned so perfectly. And I love the advice of just being authentic with yourself. I know a lot of people struggle with that, and that really is an ultimate decoding moment.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to be who you are, people.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Chris. Thanks, this has been an awesome conversation, and I can't wait to connect with you again.
Oh, thank you so much. This is wonderful. And thank you so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. We hope you took away a valuable piece of information. As always, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to help us build our community of dental decoders. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode.